Today we are making crock pot rosemary balsamic chicken and cheddar mashed potatoes. And this is a really unique crock pot recipe. And the reason why it's so unique is that when it's finished, you have two separate dishes. You have the chicken and you have the mashed potatoes. So it's very untraditional in crock pot ways because it's not all combined. It ends up being two dishes. There is a little bit of work right before eating it, but not much. So I want to go through the ingredients with you. Most of these are common things you'll have at home. That mustard powder, rosemary leaves, salt, pepper, balsamic vinegar, heavy whipping cream, butter, oil. You'll also need chicken broth, sharp cheese, red potatoes, and then bone-in chicken. And I'm using chicken thighs. Sometimes I do like legs. Sometimes I do legs and thighs. But you can really use any bone-in chicken that you want. Those are just the only two that I have used. I like to use those because they have, they're nice serving size. So I am actually doubling the original recipe. So I'm going to be using a little more than the ingredients that you will see listed. I am hoping to list this back to the author of this recipe. So look for that link in the video description. Click there and you can print out the recipe. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is to get some oil and some butter heating in the skillet. Okay, so here in my frying pan, I have 4 tablespoons of butter and 2 tablespoons of olive oil warming up over medium-high heat. And as I said, I am doubling this recipe. Here in this shallow dish, I have my seasonings for the chicken. So I have 2 teaspoons of crushed rosemary, a teaspoon of ground mustard, a teaspoon of salt, and a half a teaspoon of pepper. Just kind of mixed together there. And I'm going to take my chicken pieces and I'm just going to press them in to the seasoning like this. And then I'm going to lay them in the skillet, the frying pan, skin side down. And they are going to stay there unbothered for 6 to 8 minutes so I get a good brown on the chicken. Now, I am using about 5 pounds of chicken. If you were doing a regular batch, you would be using like 2.5 pounds. So here we have our chicken sizzling. I'm going to set the timer. I know it's only 6 minutes. 6 to 8 minutes, but here's the deal. I lose track of time and I get distracted. So I'm setting it for 6. Then I'll come back and take a look at it. In the meantime, I'm going to wash these potatoes and cut them down a little bit if there's any large potatoes. And I'm going to get these into the crock pot. I'm going to be using about 3 pounds of this 5-pound bag. So here are the potatoes I'm using. As you can see, I have a wide range of size. Now, if all of my potatoes were about like this, I would probably not cut them, just toss them in. But I've got some really big ones. This one I'm probably going to cut into 3s. This one I'm probably going to cut in half. So just to give you an idea. If you have little bitty potatoes, you don't need to cut them. So here are our potatoes hanging out in the crock pot. I'm going to add 5 cups of chicken broth. The idea is to just cover the top of the potatoes. If you need to add some water, you can, or you can reconstitute a broth with some chicken base. I do that probably most of the time when I make this recipe. Just kind of mix up my own broth quick with some chicken base. Now the idea is the chicken is going to rest on top of these potatoes. It's not going to be like fully submerged in the broth, but it's going to just get that moisture from the cooking. It'll be submerged a little bit, but it's gonna get moisture from cooking. It's just gonna hang out on top. Okay, so this isn't a dish you like stir together. I think our chicken is about ready to be flipped, so let's head over here and take a look. Okay, sorry for the noise. The chicken is sizzling. It has been about 7 minutes. Let's see if we have a brown. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Make it to, that one looks better. Let's start flipping. So we're gonna flip all the chicken, and you can kind of, you know, if you want to rearrange a little, you can. This is mostly to just brown the chicken because it is going to have a considerable amount of time in the crock pot, so it's going to get cooked the rest of the way. Now, once we get all these flipped, we're going to add our balsamic vinegar. I'm adding a 1/2 cup, and we're just going to let it simmer for 4 to 5 minutes. Let's go ahead and pour that in. Here we go. Oh, that quieted everybody down, didn't it? Okay, so let me set the timer. All right, the chicken is almost done simmering with the balsamic vinegar. I'm just going to transport the chicken right over here to the potatoes. Rest it right on top of the potatoes. I'm going to pour in the juices as well. And then I'm going to put the lid on, and it's going to cook. It's going to cook on, you could do high for 3 to 4 hours or low for 6 to 8. I'm going to do low. I normally do low. As the chicken cooks, the juices from the chicken are going to go down into the broth and help flavor the potatoes. And we will be back in 6 to 8 hours. Let me get this chicken over and show you what that looks like. There it all is in. I'm just pouring the drippings from the pan on top. All right, so we just put the lid on and we come back in 6 to 8 hours. So it's 6.5 hours later, and I'm gonna get this ready for our meal. You could cook it a little longer if you wanted to, needed to, but I'm ready to get things going here. So what we need to do, you can see all the juices that have just secreted from the chicken. We're gonna remove the chicken gently, place it here on the platter. And then we're going to take the potatoes and the liquid and very carefully pour it into a colander to drain off the broth, and we will discard that. So here's our chicken on the serving tray. This is ready to go. Of course, you should let it cool down a little because it's very hot. And then here are those potatoes that were there underneath the chicken. I'm actually going to spoon some of these out into the colander just to make it a little easier because the crock is hot and I don't want to get burned. All right, and here we go. I'm just draining off the potatoes. Now this broth, I generally just discard, but I was just thinking, you know, it's really a nice collection of broth, and there's even, it's actually kind of a condensed broth because you used a broth and then the chicken basically cooked in here for quite some time with the bone. You've also got the balsamic vinegar and some seasoning. I might taste this because I've never tasted it and just see what we could do with it. So here's all the potatoes. You just want to transfer them to a large bowl. I like to use a ceramic bowl so it kind of stays put. We're we're just gonna hand mash these a little bit. But before we do, we're gonna add the ingredients to mash the potatoes. So I am doubling this recipe. So I need 2 cups of shredded cheddar, 2 tablespoons of butter, and a cup of heavy cream, and then salt and pepper as you see fit. Now what I like to do is, anytime I make mashed potatoes, I kind of let the potatoes steam off a little, and I put in my butter and my milk and just kind of let things melt a little bit before I mash them. So I'm gonna add the cheese and the butter here and then just give it a couple minutes. Okay, so we're ready to mash these potatoes. I just use a little handheld masher like this. They don't need to be perfectly smooth. They're red skin potatoes, so they have the skin on them anyways. Now, I tasted the broth, and I don't particularly care for it. So I am not going to be saving it. It was an idea, and I thought maybe, but I was wrong. Now, the only thing you really need with this meal is just a vegetable. You could, you know, have a bag of salad, have a little salad with it. You could steam some broccoli or mixed vegetables. You could have some just, you know, just like a little veggie assortment, some cucumbers and carrot sticks or something. And there you have it. So let me get this plated up for you to see. I'm just going to mash this a little bit more. So I am adding a little salt and pepper here before I serve it up. And there you have it. I just put a little bit of baby carrots there. There you have it. You have 2 separate dishes that came from one crock pot with minimal effort. Once you're home and ready to eat, I sprinkled a little parsley on top of these just to give you a serving idea, just to fancy it up a little if you're having guests. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this recipe. It's one of my family's favorites. So check the description for the instructions or the link to the instructions, and check out my other recipes.